I'm Emma, 28 years old, and I thought I'd finally found my place in this family. For 6 years since graduating college, I'd been the one everyone turned to when money got tight. Medical bills, car repairs, house payments, I covered it all without complaint. I believed my generosity meant I belonged, that I was valued. But sitting at that restaurant table during Dad's 60th birthday celebration, watching Mom's face twist into something cruel, I realized how wrong I'd been. The woman who raised me was about to say something that would shatter every illusion I had about family loyalty. Before I tell you what happened that night, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how one sentence changed everything between my mother and me forever. Now, let me take you back to that dinner table where my world shifted. Growing up as the middle child between two brothers wasn't easy. Ethan was 3 years older, the golden boy who could do no wrong in Mom's eyes. Lucas was 2 years younger, the baby who got away with everything. I was just Emma, stuck in between, constantly trying to prove I deserved the same attention and love they seemed to get effortlessly. From elementary school through high school, I threw myself into academics while Ethan played football and Lucas charmed everyone with his humor. I studied, I made honor roll every semester, participated in debate club, volunteered at the local library. I thought if I just worked harder, achieved more, Mom would finally see me the way she saw my brothers. The financial struggles started when I was 15. Dad's construction company hit hard times during the recession. I watched my parents whisper anxiously over bills at the kitchen table. Saw Mom's face when she had to tell us there wouldn't be money for new school clothes that year. Ethan was already in college on a partial football scholarship, but even that wasn't covering everything. That's when I decided my future. I was going to study finance, make good money, and ensure my family never struggled again. I spent my junior and senior years working part-time at a local diner, saving every penny for college while maintaining my 4-grade point average. The full scholarship to State University felt like vindication. Finally, I'd done something that made Dad beam with pride and Mom grudgingly admit I was smart. But even then, I noticed she always added qualifiers. Emma's smart, but she doesn't have Ethan's leadership skills. She's focused, but not as naturally gifted as Lucas. College was where I truly found myself. Finance came naturally to me. Numbers made sense in a way human relationships never had. By my junior year, I was tutoring other students and had landed an internship at a local investment firm. That's also when the first call came. "Emma, honey, your father's truck broke down and we can't afford the repairs. I know you're just a student, but I didn't hesitate. I sent $500 from my tutoring earnings, money I'd been saving for textbooks. When Mom called again 2 months later about an unexpected medical bill, I sent another $300. Then it was the mortgage payment they were short on. Then Lucas's car insurance. By senior year, I was sending home nearly half of my internship salary. My roommates went out on weekends while I worked extra hours to cover both my family's needs and my own expenses. I told myself it was temporary, that once I graduated and got a real job, everything would balance out. But it never did. After graduation, I landed a position as a financial analyst with a solid starting salary. Instead of feeling relieved, the financial requests increased. Now that I had a real job, my family's expectations grew. Dad needed a new truck for work. The house needed a new roof. Lucas wanted to go to community college but didn't qualify for financial aid. I said yes to everything. Every request was framed as temporary, an emergency, a one-time favor. I lived in a tiny studio apartment while sending money for house repairs. I drove a 10-year-old Honda while making payments on Dad's truck. I bought discount groceries while funding family dinners at nice restaurants when I came to visit. The pattern was so gradual, I barely noticed it forming. I became the family ATM, the reliable one, the responsible daughter who had it all together. What I didn't have was a life of my own. But I told myself that sacrifice was what love looked like. 6 months ago, everything changed when Dad had chest pains at work. The ambulance ride, emergency room visit, and cardiac workup revealed several blocked arteries requiring immediate surgery. The medical bills were staggering, even with insurance. Without hesitation, I emptied my savings account and took out a personal loan to cover the costs. During Dad's recovery, I visited every weekend, bringing groceries and helping with household tasks. It was during one of these visits that Mom mentioned Dad's upcoming 60th birthday. She seemed stressed about not being able to afford a proper celebration. "Don't worry about it," I told her. "Let me handle everything." I researched restaurants for weeks, finally settling on Meridian, an upscale steakhouse downtown. I made reservations for 8 people, arranged for flowers, even coordinated with the staff for a special birthday dessert. The cost would be significant, but seeing Dad happy after such a difficult year felt worth any price. When I called to confirm the details, I told Mom I'd take care of the bill, but suggested we present it as a family gift to Dad. I didn't want him feeling guilty about the expense, especially after all the medical costs. "That's very generous, Emma," Mom said, but her tone was flat, almost resentful. At the time, I assumed she was just stressed about Dad's health. Looking back now, I realized that was the beginning of the end. The evening of Dad's birthday, I arrived at Meridian 30 minutes early to confirm arrangements with the staff. The restaurant was elegant without being stuffy, with warm lighting and rich mahogany furnishings. I'd requested a private dining area, and the hostess led me to a beautiful corner section with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Fresh flowers adorned the table exactly as I'd arranged. The sommelier approached to discuss wine selections, and I chose a bottle of Dad's favorite Cabernet Sauvignon, despite the $80 price tag. Everything had to be perfect. My family arrived together, a coordinated unit from which I was somehow always separate. Dad looked distinguished in the navy blazer I'd bought him for Christmas, his color much better than it had been months earlier. Mom wore her best dress, the burgundy one with the pearl buttons, and had clearly spent time on her hair and makeup. Ethan arrived with his wife Mia and their 2 kids, 8-year-old Chloe and 6-year-old Aiden. He'd gained weight since his football days, but still carried himself with that confident swagger that had always made him Mom's favorite. Mia was perfectly polished as always, designer handbag and manicured nails, supported by Ethan's middle management salary at the insurance company. Lucas came alone, having broken up with his latest girlfriend the month before. At 26, he was still figuring himself out, working part-time at a sporting goods store while supposedly pursuing his music career. His charm remained intact, making everyone laugh within minutes of sitting down. Then there was me, Emma, 28 and single. After my relationship with Ethan ended 3 months earlier, he'd said I was too focused on everyone else's problems to pay attention to our relationship. At the time, I'd been angry at his selfishness. Now sitting alone while my brothers had their families, his words stung with uncomfortable truth. "Emma, this place is fancy," Lucas whistled, looking around at the restaurant. Must be costing someone a fortune. It's Dad's 60th, I replied simply. He deserves something special. Mom's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, some of us believe in living within our means. The comment felt like a small barb, but I brushed it off. This evening was about Dad, not whatever mood Mom was in. As we settled into our seats, I noticed Mom positioning herself at the opposite end of the table from me. Dad sat at the head, beaming with happiness at having his whole family together. The kids chattered excitedly about the fancy cloth napkins and multiple forks at each place setting. The server approached with menus, and I caught his eye, nodding slightly. We'd arranged earlier that he would discreetly handle the bill when the time came. I'd already provided my credit card information to avoid any awkward moments about payment. Should we start with some wine? I suggested, knowing Dad would appreciate the gesture. Wine sounds perfect, Dad agreed, his eyes crinkling with joy. This is such a treat having everyone together like this. But as the evening progressed, I began to notice Mom's comments becoming more pointed. When I mentioned my recent promotion to senior analyst, she remarked, "Must be nice to have all that extra money to throw around." When the appetizers arrived, and I suggested we order a few to share, she added, "I suppose when you're single with no real responsibilities, you can afford to be generous." Each comment was delivered with a smile couched in language that could be interpreted as harmless observation, but the underlying message was clear. I was being criticized for the very financial stability that had been supporting the family for years. Ethan seemed oblivious to the undercurrents, lost in his happiness at the celebration. Lucas and Ethan laughed along with Mom's remarks, treating them as good-natured family teasing. But I felt each one like a small cut, the cumulative effect building into something much more painful. As the main course arrived, the conversation turned to family memories, with everyone sharing stories about Dad's life and accomplishments. It should have been heartwarming, but Mom's commentary continued to poison the atmosphere for me. When Ethan told a story about Dad teaching him to drive, Mom added, "He was always so patient with the boys. Girls are different though, more complicated." When Lucas shared a memory about Dad coming to his high school concerts, she said, "Your father always made time for what really mattered." Not everyone appreciates that kind of dedication. I tried to contribute my own memories, but each attempt was either ignored or somehow turned into a criticism. When I mentioned how Dad had driven 4 hours to my college graduation, Mom responded, "Well, he felt obligated. You were always so demanding of his attention." The wine was flowing freely now, and with each glass, Mom's restraint seemed to diminish. Her comments became more direct, less disguised as casual observations. "Emma always thinks she knows best," she said when I suggested we order dessert. "Must come from spending so much time with numbers instead of people." Ethan laughed. "She's always been the serious one. Remember how she used to make spreadsheets for her allowance?" "I was 10, I said quietly, feeling my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Even then, she was obsessed with money," Lucas added, apparently thinking he was being funny. I looked around the table, suddenly seeing the dynamic clearly. I was the outsider, the one they could safely mock because I'd never fought back. The responsible one, the reliable one, the one who paid for everything while being treated like the family joke. Dad must have sensed my discomfort because he tried to redirect the conversation. "Emma's done very well for herself. We're proud of her success." But Mom wasn't finished. Success, she repeated as if the word tasted bitter. I suppose that's one way to look at it, though. I've always believed there's more to life than just making money. The implication was clear. I was shallow, materialistic, missing out on what truly mattered. This from the woman whose medical bills I'd paid, whose mortgage I'd helped with, whose family dinners I was currently funding. I felt my patience beginning to fray, but I held my tongue. This was Dad's birthday. I wouldn't ruin it by starting an argument. The server approached with the wine list, asking if we'd like another bottle. I was about to agree when Mom spoke up. "Oh, I think we've had enough. Some of us have to work tomorrow." She looked directly at me. "Though, I suppose when you make enough money, you can afford to take time off whenever you want." That wasn't even true. I worked more hours than anyone at my firm, taking on extra projects to advance my career and maintain the income that supported not just myself, but increasingly my family. "Actually, I've been working 60-hour weeks," I said, trying to keep my voice level. The promotion came with additional responsibilities. 60 hours, Ethan whistled. "No wonder you're still single. Who has time for a relationship working like that?" Mia elbowed him, recognizing the insensitivity of the comment, but the damage was done. The breakup with Ethan was still fresh, and having it thrown in my face at a family dinner felt particularly cruel. Mom seized on the moment. "That's exactly what I mean. Emma's so focused on her career, she's missing out on what really matters. Family, relationships, a normal life." I stared at her across the table. This woman who had raised me, wondering how she could be so blind to the irony of her words. I was missing out on a normal life, precisely because I was so focused on taking care of this family. But still, I said nothing. I smiled tightly and reached for my wine glass, counting the minutes until this dinner would be over. The tension reached a breaking point when the server arrived with Dad's birthday cake. A rich chocolate creation with "Happy 60th Birthday" written in elegant script. Dad's face lit up with genuine joy as we sang. And for a moment, the earlier unpleasantness faded into the background. "Make a wish, Dad," I called out, clapping my hands. Dad closed his eyes, made his wish, and blew out the candles to enthusiastic applause. The moment felt pure, untainted by the underlying currents that had been building all evening. "Time for presents," Mia announced, producing a carefully wrapped package from Ethan's family. The gifts were thoughtful but modest. Ethan and Mia had gotten Dad a nice polo shirt and a book about woodworking. Lucas presented a framed photo of himself and Dad from a fishing trip last summer. The kids had made handmade cards that Dad treasured as much as anything else. I had saved my gift for last, both because I wanted it to be special and because I was nervous about the family's reaction. The watch had cost more than everyone else's gifts combined. But when I'd seen Dad admiring it in the jewelry store window months earlier, I'd known it was perfect. "This is from me, Dad," I said, sliding the small velvet box across the table. Dad opened it carefully, and his breath caught when he saw the Omega Seamaster inside. It was a beautiful timepiece, classic and elegant, with a navy blue face that matched his favorite blazer. "Emma," he whispered, his eyes filling with tears. "This is too much. I can't accept this." "You can and you will," I said firmly. "You've worked hard your whole life, Dad. You deserve something beautiful." He lifted the watch from its box with reverent hands, and I helped him fasten it around his wrist. The fit was perfect, and the watch looked distinguished against his tan skin. "It's gorgeous," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'll treasure it always." But as I looked around the table, I realized my gift had created an uncomfortable moment. Everyone else's presents suddenly seemed inadequate by comparison, and the disparity in cost was obvious to everyone. Lucas let out a low whistle. "Damn, Emma, that's a serious watch." "Language," Mia scolded automatically, glancing at the kids. Ethan was studying the watch with obvious envy. "That must have cost a fortune." "It doesn't matter what it cost," I said, but I could feel the mood at the table shifting. Mom's face had hardened into something cold and calculating. I watched her processing the implications of my expensive gift, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her mind. "Well," she said finally, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I suppose when you don't have a husband or children to support, you can afford to spend money on whatever you want." The comment hit like a physical blow. Not only was she diminishing my gift to Dad, but she was also highlighting my single status and childlessness as personal failures. Dad tried to intervene. "Margaret, that's enough. Emma gave me a beautiful gift and I'm grateful." But Mom wasn't finished. She'd been building up to this moment all evening, and now she was ready to strike. "Oh, I'm sure you are grateful, Robert. Emma's always been very good at buying affection." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Everyone at the table understood the implication that my generosity wasn't genuine love, but some kind of manipulation or attempt to purchase approval. I felt my world tilting. This was my mother, the woman who had raised me, and she was suggesting that every sacrifice I'd made for this family was somehow calculated and selfish. "That's not fair," I said quietly, my voice barely steady. "Isn't it?" Mom's mask was slipping now, revealing something ugly underneath. "You throw money around like you're doing us all some great favor, but what you're really doing is showing off, making the rest of us feel small." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 6 years of sending money home, of covering medical bills and mortgage payments and car repairs, and she was framing it as vanity. "I've never made anyone feel small," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "I just wanted to help." "Help," she repeated mockingly. "Right, help." She took another sip of wine, and I could see she was past the point of caring about consequences. "You know what I think, Emma? I think you use money to control people, to make yourself feel important." The restaurant seemed to fade around us. Other diner conversations became background noise. All I could hear was my mother's voice, sharp and cruel, cutting through every illusion I'd held about my place in this family. Dad was looking between us with growing alarm. "Margaret, please, not tonight." But Mom was beyond stopping. She'd been holding this in for months, maybe years, and now it was all spilling out. "No, Robert, she needs to hear this. Emma thinks she's so much better than the rest of us because she has money. She lords it over us, makes us feel like we should be grateful for every little thing she does." I was shaking now, years of suppressed hurt and anger rising to the surface. Every little thing. "I paid for Dad's surgery. I've been covering your mortgage for 2 years. I'm paying for this dinner right now." The words came out louder than I'd intended, and I noticed other restaurant patrons beginning to glance in our direction. Mom's eyes flashed with something like triumph. She'd succeeded in provoking me and making me lose my composure at Dad's birthday dinner. "There it is," she said with satisfaction. "The truth comes out. You keep track of every penny, don't you? every favor cataloged, every dollar spent held over our heads. "That's not true," I said desperately, looking around the table for support. But Ethan and Lucas were staring at their plates, unwilling to get involved. Mia was focused on keeping the kids distracted. Dad looked stricken but paralyzed. Mom leaned forward, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper that somehow carried more weight than shouting would have. "You want to know what I really think, Emma? I think you're pathetic. A lonely, bitter woman who can't buy the love she's never earned naturally." The words hit me like physical blows, but she wasn't finished. "You sit there in your expensive clothes, flashing your money around, thinking it makes you special. But you know what? You're not even part of this family." She said the last words with a cruel laugh, as if the very idea of my belonging was absurd. The restaurant fell silent around our table. Even the ambient noise seemed to disappear as her words echoed in my mind. "You're not even part of this family." Everything stopped. My heart, my breathing, my ability to think clearly. The woman who had given birth to me, who had raised me for 18 years, had just declared that I didn't belong. Time seemed suspended in that moment after Mom's words. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, could feel the blood draining from my face as the full impact of what she'd said settled over me. "You're not even part of this family." Around the table, everyone had gone still. Dad's face was ashen, his mouth hanging slightly open in shock. Ethan and Lucas were staring at Mom with expressions of disbelief. Mia had her hands over the kids' ears, trying to shield them from the ugliness unfolding before them, but Mom looked satisfied, almost triumphant. She'd finally said what she'd apparently been thinking for years, and the relief on her face was unmistakable. The rage that built inside me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It started as a cold knot in my stomach and spread outward like fire, consuming every rational thought. 6 years of sacrifice, of putting my family's needs before my own, of working 60-hour weeks to support people who saw me as an outsider. I thought about my tiny studio apartment furnished with second-hand furniture, because I'd been sending money home instead of building a real life for myself. I thought about Ethan, who'd left because I was always stressed about family financial crises, always choosing their needs over our relationship. I thought about the watch on Dad's wrist, purchased with money I'd earned through countless late nights and weekend projects. I thought about the medical bills I'd paid without question, the mortgage payments I'd covered without complaint, the credit card debt I'd taken on to keep this family afloat, and I thought about sitting alone in that restaurant, the outsider at my own father's birthday celebration, being told I wasn't even part of the family I'd been supporting. The clarity that came with rage was almost crystalline. For the first time in my adult life, I saw my family dynamics with perfect, painful honesty. I, the beloved daughter who helped out occasionally. I was the family ATM, valued only for what I could provide, resented even for that. Mom was watching me, waiting for my reaction. Perhaps she expected tears or an angry outburst that would let her paint me as the unstable one. Maybe she thought I'd apologize, try to make peace as I always had before. Instead, I reached for my wine glass with a steady hand. The action seemed to surprise her. I could see confusion flicker across her face as I lifted the glass, holding it at eye level as if making a toast. "Perfect," I said, my voice calm and clear despite the chaos raging inside me. "Then don't ask me for any more money." The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock that spread across every face at the table. Mom's expression changed instantly. The triumphant satisfaction disappeared, replaced by something that looked like panic. For the first time, she seemed to understand the implications of what she just said. "Emma," she started, but I held up my free hand to stop her. "No, Mom, you're absolutely right. If I'm not part of this family, then I have no obligations to this family." I took a sip of wine, savoring both the taste and the growing alarm on my mother's face. Dad found his voice first. "Emma, sweetheart, your mother didn't mean that. She's just upset about something. This isn't what any of us want." But I was looking at Mom, watching the color drain from her cheeks as she began to calculate what my words meant. "Didn't you mean it, Mom?" I asked with deceptive gentleness, "because it sounded like you meant it. It sounded like you've been thinking it for a long time." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I continued, my voice growing stronger with each sentence. "Because if I'm not part of this family, then I should probably stop acting like I am. I should stop paying for family dinners like this one. I should stop covering mortgage payments, medical bills, and car repairs." Lucas and Ethan were looking back and forth between Mom and me, finally beginning to understand the scope of my financial contributions to the family. "I should probably stop taking calls at midnight when someone needs emergency money," I continued. "I should stop working overtime to cover everyone else's shortfalls. I should start living like the selfish, money-obsessed person you seem to think I am." "Emma, please," Mom whispered, her voice barely audible. But I wasn't finished. 6 years of suppressed resentment were pouring out now, and I couldn't have stopped if I'd wanted to. "You know what's funny, Mom? You're right about one thing, I do keep track of money. So, let me share some numbers with everyone." I looked around the table, making eye contact with each family member in turn. $18,000 for Dad's medical bills, $12,000 in mortgage payments over the past 2 years, $8,000 for Lucas's car when it was repossessed, $6,000 for Ethan's community college tuition that he never finished, $4,000 for the new roof, $3,000 for the furnace repair last winter. With each number, Mom's face grew paler, and my brother's expressions grew more shocked. "This dinner tonight, $350, including wine and tip, all paid for by someone who isn't even part of the family." The silence in the restaurant was complete now. Even other diners had stopped their conversations, sensing the drama unfolding at our table. Mom tried again, her voice desperate. "Emma, I was just upset. I didn't really mean." "You meant it," I said firmly. "And you know what? You're right. I have been trying to buy love, trying to earn my place in this family with money. But you can't buy something that was never for sale." I stood up slowly, my legs surprisingly steady despite the emotional earthquake I was experiencing. The restaurant around us remained silent, other diners pretending not to watch while clearly riveted by the family drama unfolding at our table. "Where are you going?" Dad asked, panic creeping into his voice. "I'm going home," I said simply, "but first I need to take care of something." I caught the server's eye and motioned him over. He approached cautiously, clearly aware that something significant was happening at our table. "I need to make a change to the payment method," I told him quietly. "Please remove my credit card from the bill." The server glanced nervously around the table, unsure how to handle the situation. "Ma'am, your card is already on file for the entire dinner." "Then please remove it and bring separate checks for everyone," I said firmly. Mom's face went from pale to ashen. "Emma, don't be ridiculous. We can work this out." But I was already pulling my wallet from my purse, removing the credit card I'd planned to use for the family celebration. The server took it hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable with the tension radiating from our table. "Actually," I said, reconsidering, "just bring my check separately. Everyone else can figure out how to split theirs." The implications of my words hit the table like a physical force. This wasn't just about one dinner. This was about the end of my financial support, the end of my role as the family safety net. Lucas was the first to really understand. "Emma, wait, let's talk about this. Mom was out of line, but we can fix this. Can we?" I asked, turning to face him. "Because I don't think this is something that just happened tonight, Lucas. I think this is how all of you have felt for a long time." Ethan was frantically calculating in his head, probably trying to figure out how much money I'd contributed to his life over the years. His part-time job at the sporting goods store barely covered his rent, let alone his other expenses. "Come on, Emma," he said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow. "We're family. Family fights sometimes. It doesn't mean anything." "It means everything," I replied. "It means I finally understand where I stand with all of you." Dad was trying desperately to salvage the situation. "Your mother has been under a lot of stress lately. The medical bills, the recovery, all the changes. She's not thinking clearly." "Dad," I said gently, my heart breaking a little at the pain in his eyes. "The medical bills that I paid, the stress about money that I've been covering for years, Mom's not upset about financial pressure. She's upset that I exist." I looked directly at Mom, who was staring at her hands, unable to meet my gaze. "Isn't that right, Mom? You've resented every dollar I've sent, every bill I've paid, every time I've helped this family. Not because you didn't need the help, but because needing it made you feel small." When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. The time for sympathy had passed when she declared I wasn't part of the family. "You want to know what the real problem is?" I continued. "It's not that I have money. It's that I have independence. It's that I built a life for myself instead of getting married and having babies like you think I should have. It's that I succeeded in ways that make you uncomfortable." "That's not true," she whispered, "isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been punishing me for not fitting into your idea of what a daughter should be." The server returned with separate checks, placing mine discreetly beside my plate and setting the remaining bill in the center of the table. The amount was significant. I could see from the expressions on my brothers' faces as they glimpsed the total. "Can't afford this," Ethan said quietly, the reality of the situation sinking in. "Neither can we," Lucas added, looking at Olivia with growing panic. "Not with the kids' expenses and everything else." Dad reached for his wallet, but I could see from his expression that he was calculating whether his fixed income could cover an unexpected $300 dinner bill. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," I said, pulling out enough cash to cover my portion, plus a generous tip. "For 6 years, I've been the solution to problems like this. Well, I'm not part of the family, so it's not my problem anymore." Mom was crying openly now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Emma, please, I was wrong to say what I said. I was angry and I lashed out. But you can't just abandon your family over one mistake." "One mistake?" I repeated incredulously. "Mom, this wasn't one mistake. This was you finally saying what you've been thinking all along." I placed my money on the table and picked up my purse. The weight of 6 years of family obligation was lifting from my shoulders, leaving me feeling simultaneously lighter and more alone than I'd ever been. "I want you all to understand something," I said, looking around the table one final time. "I never threw money around to show off or make anyone feel small. I helped because I loved you, because I thought that's what family did for each other. But love has to go both ways." Dad stood up, reaching for my arm. "Please don't leave like this. It's my birthday. We can fix this." I hugged him gently, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne. "Happy birthday, Dad. I hope the watch brings you joy for many years to come." "Emma," he pleaded, "I love you, Dad. I always will. But I can't keep pretending that sending money home is the same thing as being loved in return." I kissed his cheek and stepped back, my decision final. "I hope you all figure out how to pay for dinner," I said to the table at large. "And I hope you figure out how to pay for everything else, too." With that, I walked away from the table, through the restaurant, past the curious stares of other diners, and out into the cool evening air. For the first time in 6 years, I was truly free. The drive home was surreal. I kept expecting to feel guilt or regret about walking out on Dad's birthday dinner, but instead, I felt something I barely recognized: relief. Pure, overwhelming relief at finally standing up for myself. My phone started ringing before I'd even reached my apartment. Dad's number appeared on the screen, then Lucas's, then Ethan's. I let them all go to voicemail. Whatever they had to say could wait until I'd processed what had just happened. My studio apartment felt different when I walked in. The same second-hand furniture, the same cramped space, but somehow it felt more like home than it ever had before. This was my space, paid for with my money, decorated with my choices. No family obligations hanging over every decision. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my small couch, finally allowing myself to fully absorb the events of the evening. 6 years of financial support had ended with one sentence from my mother. 6 years of sacrifice, putting family needs before my own, dismissed as selfishness and showing off. The phone rang again, Mom's number this time. I stared at it for several rings before declining the call. The voicemail started accumulating quickly. Dad's first message was desperate, pleading, "Emma, sweetheart, please call me back. Your mother is beside herself. She knows she made a terrible mistake. We can work this out. Please don't let one bad evening destroy our family." Lucas's message was more practical, more panicked. "Emma, I don't know what just happened back there, but we need to talk. I had no idea you were covering so much of Mom and Dad's expenses. We need to figure this situation out." Ethan's was shorter, more emotional. "I messed up, Emma. We all did. I never realized how much you've been doing for all of us. Please call me back." But it was Mom's message that revealed the most. "Emma, I know you're angry and you have every right to be. I said terrible things tonight, things I didn't mean. But please, we need to talk. Your father's surgery bills aren't the only debts we have. We owe money on the house, on the cars, on credit cards we used for living expenses. Without your help, I don't know how we're going to manage. Please, honey, I'm sorry." I played that message 3 times, each listening, revealing new layers of manipulation. Even in her apology, Mom was focusing on what my withdrawal of support would cost them, not on the pain her words had caused me. The next few days brought a constant stream of phone calls, text messages, and emails. Dad called every morning and evening, his voice growing more strained with each message. Lucas and Ethan took turns trying different approaches: guilt, anger, bargaining, pleading. But it was the silence from Mom that spoke the loudest. After that first desperate voicemail, nothing. No apology, no attempt to make amends, no acknowledgement of the pain she'd caused. Her silence confirmed what I'd suspected. She wasn't sorry for what she'd said, only sorry for the consequences. A week after the dinner, I made a decision that would have been unthinkable before Mom's declaration. I booked a vacation to Hawaii, something I'd been putting off for years because there was always a family financial crisis that needed my attention. The travel agent was surprised by how quickly I made decisions: first-class flights, oceanfront hotel, full spa package. "This is quite a splurge," she commented as she processed my credit card. "I'm celebrating my independence," I told her. The vacation was a revelation. 10 days of beaches and spa treatments and fine dining, 10 days of not checking my phone every hour for financial emergency calls from home. I read novels on the beach, took sunset walks along the shore, had conversations with strangers who knew nothing about my family obligations. On the flight home, I felt like a different person. Tanned, relaxed, and most importantly, confident in my worth as an individual rather than as a financial resource. The transformation wasn't lost on my colleagues at work. My boss, Jennifer, commented on my improved focus and energy during our next team meeting. "Whatever you did on vacation, keep doing it," she said. "Your performance has been exceptional since you got back." It turned out that not being constantly stressed about family finances was good for my career. Who would have thought? 3 months after Dad's birthday dinner, the full consequences of my withdrawal from family financial support became apparent. The phone calls had continued, growing more desperate as bills came due, and the family realized I wasn't bluffing about ending my support. Dad's first call came when the mortgage payment was due. His voice was shaky, older somehow. "Emma, I hate to ask, but we're short on the house payment this month. Could you possibly help us out one more time? I know things ended badly at dinner, but this is about keeping a roof over our heads." I listened to the entire message twice before deleting it. The old Emma would have immediately transferred money, would have worked overtime to cover the shortfall. The new Emma recognized manipulation when she heard it. "Lucas called when, you seem so centered," David commented after we'd been dating for 2 months. "Like, you really know who you are and what you want." I smiled, feeling the warmth of his genuine observation. "I guess I finally do," I admitted. "It took a lot of work and a lot of walking away from things I shouldn't have carried." He nodded, understanding without needing all the details. That alone felt liberating. For the first time in years, I could talk about my life without weighing it against the needs, expectations, or judgments of my family. The changes weren't just external. Inside, I felt calmer, more self-assured. I'd learned that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was necessary. That independence did mean I loved my family any less. It meant I valued myself enough to stop being a safety net at the cost of my own well-being. 3 months after my initial withdrawal, I visited Dad alone. He was healthier now, and while Mom's absence was still palpable, he seemed lighter too. We shared a quiet afternoon together, talking about his hobbies, work projects, and dreams for retirement. No money discussions, no guilt, just connection. "Linda, I've been thinking," Dad said, eyes twinkling. "Maybe we all needed this lesson. You set boundaries, and now we're learning how to live without leaning on you so heavily." "I hope so, Dad," I said, feeling a surprising mix of pride and sadness. "But I also know we can't just pretend things didn't happen. We have to build something new, carefully, slowly, honestly." Meanwhile, my relationship with David deepened. There were dinners without guilt, weekends without financial anxiety, and conversations that weren't interrupted by calls from home. We explored new hobbies together, traveled, and laughed in ways I hadn't remembered since before Marcus. I was fully present, fully engaged, fully me. Therapy remained a cornerstone of my personal growth. Dr. Chen's guidance helped me recognize patterns I had unconsciously repeated in relationships, both personal and professional. "You've spent so long being the responsible one for everyone else," she said during a session. "Now you get to practice responsibility for yourself and for the people who truly value you." By the time the first anniversary of Dad's birthday dinner rolled around, the emotional landscape had shifted. Mom and I were still distant, but the letter and subsequent conversations had opened the door. She had kept up with her therapy, continued reflecting on her behavior, and taken small steps to communicate without resentment. The family, collectively, had begun facing their own responsibilities. No one called me at midnight to cover a bill. No one expected me to sacrifice my career or my happiness. On that anniversary, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, looking at my schedule full of work projects, social events, and dates with David. I smiled at the contrast between my life now and the one I had lived a year earlier. Freedom wasn't just leaving the dinner, it was reclaiming my time, my energy, and my sense of worth. And for the first time, I truly understood that helping others was meaningful only when it came from a place of choice, not obligation. My family would have to navigate their lives without me as a crutch, but I would no longer let their dependency define mine. I finally felt like myself, strong, independent, and unashamed of the life I had built. And in that newfound clarity, I realized something even more profound. I didn't need anyone else to validate my love, my generosity, or my existence. I had learned to honor it myself. The journey wasn't over. Family dynamics rarely are, but for the first time, I had agency. And that made all the difference. One who had been caught in the web of obligation and guilt, sacrificing her own dreams and mental health to keep everyone else afloat. Hearing their stories reinforced how important boundaries were, not just for me, but for anyone in a position of giving more than they can afford emotionally or financially. By the end of that year, I felt an equilibrium I hadn't known existed. Family relationships were healthier, built on respect and reciprocity rather than silent expectations and resentment. Mom's presence in my life was cautious but growing, no longer a source of constant criticism, but someone willing to confront her own flaws. Dad seemed lighter, happier, and more engaged in his retirement pursuits. Tom and Gary were learning financial responsibility and personal accountability, and even Emma and Jake had the chance to see me as their aunt first, not just their benefactor. And me, I had reclaimed my life entirely. My apartment felt like a sanctuary, my career was thriving, and my relationship with David was nurturing and affirming. I was finally able to pursue personal growth and experiences that had been postponed for years: vacations, learning new skills, deepening friendships, and investing in my own health and happiness. Sitting on my balcony one evening, watching the sun set over the city, I reflected on the journey. It had begun with heartbreak, frustration, and confrontation, but it had led to freedom, understanding, and a sense of belonging that had nothing to do with money. I had learned that family love was not transactional, and that self-respect was as important as the love you gave. I smiled, a deep, unburdened smile, knowing that the heart I had always given to my family was finally being reciprocated, not because I paid for it, but because I had stopped trying to buy it. And in that, I found a peace that no financial contribution could ever provide, a belonging built on mutual respect, honesty, and genuine affection. Life hadn't been perfect, and challenges remained, but for the first time, I faced them not as a caretaker exhausted by obligation, but as a woman empowered to live fully for herself while still loving her family on healthy terms. The balance had been restored, and it felt extraordinary. As the second anniversary of that fateful birthday dinner approached, I found myself reflecting on just how much my life had changed. I was in a healthy, loving relationship, thriving in my career, financially secure, and most importantly, at peace with my family. The woman who had walked out of that restaurant 2 years earlier had been broken, desperate for validation. The woman I had become was strong, confident, and fully aware of her worth. That transformation hadn't come without cost. There were lonely nights, difficult conversations, and moments of doubt, wondering if I'd done the right thing. But each challenge had built strength, clarity, and ultimately peace. The final piece of healing came unexpectedly when my mom asked if she could attend one of my financial literacy workshops. "I want to understand what you do," she said. "I want to learn how to manage money better so I never have to put that kind of burden on you again." Watching her take notes as I explained budgeting strategies and investment principles was surreal, but it was also deeply moving. She was genuinely trying to understand my world and take responsibility for her own financial future. After the workshop, she lingered. "I'm proud of you," she said simply, "not just for your accomplishments, but for the way you stood up for yourself. You taught our whole family how to love better." Her words meant more to me than any amount of money ever could. Now, when people ask me about family relationships and financial boundaries, I tell them about that birthday dinner. I tell them about walking away from a family that had taken my love for granted and about the long, difficult process of rebuilding those relationships on healthier terms. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable dysfunction, even when that dysfunction has become comfortable for everyone involved. The woman who raised her glass that night and said, "Perfect, then don't ask me for any more money," wasn't cruel or vindictive. After 28 years, she was finally standing up for herself, and in doing so, she saved not just herself, but her entire family. Because real love isn't about what you can give someone else. Real love is about seeing each other clearly, accepting each other fully, and choosing each other freely. That's the kind of family I have now, and it's worth more than all the money in the world. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? How did you find the courage to prioritize your own well-being? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't measured by what they can provide for others. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is love yourself enough to demand better. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.